The following program is exclusively produced by Big Head Amusements for KQEK Digital.
The series was conceived, I guess, out of a desire for TIFF to build out a schedule of public programming that would run throughout the year. They were looking to create a 365-day-a-year experience for TIFF as opposed to the actual film festival in September. And so through some mutual friends and a connection, I was introduced to Shane Smith, who's the director of public programs, and we discussed this idea of bringing short-form filmmaking into the building. So my background is advertising, so I know quite a bit about advertising and music videos, so we conceived this program to focus on advertising short films and music videos.
And what do you find particularly fascinating about the films produced for such specific commercial venues like music videos and TV ads?
Well, I mean, I've always enjoyed this type of filmmaking. I think that there's a high degree of craft that goes into doing something for somebody else. I mean, I think we think of film as being sprung from the brain of the filmmaker. When you're dealing specifically with commercials, you're having to be creative, create beautiful and compelling film, but with a lot of client input. Music videos are a lot more creatively free, I suppose, but they certainly do have a purpose. They are advertising for a band or an artist. They're certainly creating a persona and expanding that in a filmmaking format. So I think it's interesting. I mean, I wouldn't necessarily say they're two in the same, but they certainly have shades of similarity. So I just really enjoy the idea of telling a short story in a short period of time and sort of expanding what can be said about a particular brand or a particular artist through that filmmaking medium. And also just there's a great degree of craft that goes into that short-form filmmaking, and I'm just really thrilled that there's an opportunity to showcase that within TIFF.
With so many produced within any single country, how do you find program material? Because it must be very difficult to actually winnow down such an enormous international selection down to just a 90-minute show.
Absolutely. I mean, that's one of the hardest parts. There's two things, or there's a few things, but two things specifically. You have to pretend like you're not going to see the entire world's worth of work. And I rely heavily on my Facebook and online friends, many of whom are, either filmmakers themselves or connected in that world. But no, in reality, most of the work that I do professionally revolves around keeping track of interesting work, whether it be the work I do as a journalist or in curating work as well. I mean, I edited a magazine that covered the advertising industry I was there for almost 10 years, so I spent a lot of time looking at work, evaluating reels, choosing things to cover editorially. So it's just sort of an extension of that. But it certainly is a big challenge to, bring the world to the screen in 1 hour. But that's where the themes help for us. I mean, each of our screenings is structured around a theme, and that helps narrow down what it is I'm looking for and what I can select, because otherwise it just becomes epic. We don't have to know all of the sites or all of the companies to go to ourselves, because we have people who have those connections, and that's that purview to those particular, type of the world, I suppose. And so you can rely on them to share and pass around and connect, which is certainly a huge part of how I program and curate the work that I do, and also an understanding of the companies out there that produce music videos and short films, because a lot of the people who are directing this work, they're directors. They're not directors of advertising. They're not directors of music videos. They are directors. So whatever the medium or whatever type of work comes their way, they'll be involved. So once also the companies, you can be like, oh, I really love that director. Let's see what they're up to. And then all of a sudden someone might say, hey, check out, they've done this amazing little short film or short documentary that you might never have seen. And it sort of steamrolls and it develops that way, which is really helpful too.
Are there any unique licensing and rights issues to the works compared to feature films?
I've never really had to deal with programming features, so I think it's a lot less bureaucratic. Generally speaking, particularly when it comes to short films, independent short films, and music videos, people are just really keen to get their work seen. We're a small enough program that, generally speaking, people are really pleased to have their work shown in this context. I mean, having work, particularly, advertising, shown on a big screen is a rarity, and having a collective group of people watching it together and kind of creating that filmic experience around this type of content, specifically these days with how stuff is consumed online, I think is a really unique experience. And generally speaking, people are really interested in just having their work part of the program.
That's actually I think for me, one of the biggest appeals of the series, because I think I vaguely remember as a kid going to see movies and actually seeing a cartoon once in a while. But I know that, 30, 40 years before that, you had sort of a standard program where you did, in fact, have newsreels and short films and documentaries and newsreels and commercials. And there is a marked difference between seeing whether it's a music video or an ad on television or online versus on the big screen in one of the Lightbox's cinemas. And it's just amazing to see them projected because you realize that they are very cinematic and the sound mixes, the visuals are outstanding. But it's kind of a shame that that experience actually isn't a standard thing anymore, or it's not an occasional thing even.
Well, even in terms of like as an advertising format, just to talk specifically about advertising, it always seemed remarkable to me that there were so few cinema ads. I mean, in the UK, I think cinema advertising is a lot more common, but as a moviegoer, I used to get incredibly frustrated by seeing the same 4 ads in front of a film, and usually they weren't high definition. They were terrible quality, and it's just sort of like you have a captive audience. And in a time where marketers in particular are bemoaning the fact that there's not the mass audience, and you've got people who've paid to be in the cinema, and you're not putting good advertising in front of them, it's a huge lost opportunity. I mean, it annoys people to the point of being like, why is there advertising in front of my film? When in fact really great advertising could be really rewarding. I mean, in a cinema context, you could do a longer version, and I think of Coke as a really good example of that. With their Happiness Factory over the last several years, they have longer versions of those animated ads that they do, and they have the ability to showcase them in a longer, broader, more sort of entertaining kind of way, as opposed to when they show it on television. And those are rewarding experiences as opposed to the same old, that you see on television, you see everywhere else. I think the other thing that's really interesting, in my opinion, about this program is that, aside from going to a cinema and seeing good advertising, you're not there to see the ads, you're there to see the film. When you go to this program, you know what you're getting into, and you're there to actually see ads and music videos. And I think there's a different willingness on behalf of the people who come to actually appreciate this content as filmmaking content, like as film content, as opposed to just, however they might perceive it in a different setting. So there's something interesting about the actual place, I think.
And I think also one aspect of the program, which I'm assuming it's somewhat deliberate, is that in addition to sort of, let's say, the more overt commercial elements, which are the ads and the music videos, which are more recognizable to people, are also the short films, specifically the animated films, which I think animated shorts tend to get a lot of short shrift. Like, you hear about them maybe getting nominated for awards, perhaps they might get shown online in short little things, but basically a lot of them tend to be overlooked, and there's so much beautiful animation being done, and a lot of the stories themselves are not necessarily uplifting, or sometimes they're a bit on the dark side, or maybe they're a bit too experimental. But I think it's kind of interesting the way that you've sort of snuck in really interesting animation between sort of the more commercial components, so that people get exposed to, I think, a broader spectrum of short form films.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, shorts have always been a challenge, right? Like, where's the outlet for them? I mean, a music video is going to be sought after by fans of that particular artist. An ad is going to be, put in front of people in whatever sort of, paid media space or, social context. But it's much, much harder for shorts. I mean, also, if you think about, they tend to be a little bit longer, so they're not as light online. It's not as easy to just sort of like pass things around. Sometimes you have upload issues, or people for festival reasons only want to put a trailer up. So it is much more difficult to actually experience short films, which is why it is an important part. It's not even a matter of saying, well, we must include shorts. It's really a function of who's making this work and the type of work that they do. The directors who are doing this kind of work make shorts, make videos, make commercials, and we didn't want to be exclusionary of any one of those things because it sort of speaks to the entire experience of these types of filmmakers. So it's really cool to be able to give these works a platform. It's not as big as a festival or anything like that, but it is certainly another outlet for them to get their work out there. And yeah, I mean, I like mixing it up too because, like a whole program of ads can be cool, but it can also be a little bit uniform, and it's nice to be able to mix it up and break up the pace and create a bit of an emotional arc with whatever work I put together. And for me, it's a matter of finding pieces that have some sort of emotional connection to me, but also fit in with whatever, type of story we're trying to tell with whatever theme we have for each screening.
The series itself, it comes every 2 months?
Yep, it's bi-monthly. It started last year. We did it quarterly last year. We're bi-monthly this year, and we'll extend into 2013. Hopefully, as we grow, we will have the opportunity to do either limited runs or repeat screenings. But as it stands right now, it's kind of one-time deal, come or you miss it.
For related film and film music reviews, please visit KQEK.com. This program is copyright 2013 by Mark R. Hassan.